valuable iron as the axle for Subhadra's cart. And it had started to get worn through after 2 years of Rath Yatras, which we weren't aware of. So we warned everyone not to ride on Subhadra's cart because we were worried about it not being strong. But guess what? People got on anyhow, and the wheel bent almost horizontal. We thought, oh no, we've lost Balaram's cart. Now we've lost Subhadra's cart. What on earth are we going to do? So it suddenly occurred to me, and I said, wait a minute. I want 50 people to lift Subhadra's cart. And 50 people rushed forward and lifted Subhadra's cart. And I want another 50 people to grab the wheel and bend it down again. And they did. They came and they took the wheel, and that piece of iron that was 2.5 inches thick, they just bent it back again so the wheel was perfectly vertical. And I said, now I want another 50 people to guard it so nobody gets on. And nobody got on.
When Prabhupada arrived at Rath Yatra in the middle of Golden Gate Park, all the devotees stopped. Srila Prabhupada was supposed to give a lecture at the beginning of the Rath Yatra festival, but because there was some disturbance at that time, Prabhupada delayed his arrival, and he entered Golden Gate Park up the road about a mile or so from the beginning, and then walked back towards the Rath Yatra cart and took everybody by surprise. Prabhupada had many garlands that were given to him, and he took one of his garlands off, and he looked for Jayananda, and he garlanded Jayananda with the, the flower garlands that was given to him, making that, benediction to Jayananda. And Prabhupada began to dance in a circle. You see Prabhupada's flowing robes. Bhavananda picked out the fabric for that cloth.
When I saw this really nice shimmery peach silk satin cloth, but it was actually, I think, like an upholstery cloth, but it was beautiful. So I wanted that, so I bought that, and I insisted, Madhavisa was tearing his seek out, I insisted on buying real pearls. I wanted to make real pearl buttons and a real pearl button on the side, the little strap that goes under his chin on his Prabhupada hat, a real pearl there. So Madhavisa, mumbling and grumbling, gave me the money. And when Madhavisa brought the cloth over, Prabhupada looked at it and said, "As you dress me, so I shall dance." Yeah, it was wonderful.
He gave instructions about the dancing, I know that. For that year, I think it was 1970, that he told the devotees how to dance in front of the deities, specifically based on the descriptions that are in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. At that time, the Chaitanya Charitamrita was not available. In one group, Lord Nityananda would be the dancer in front of one chariot, and another chariot, I think it was a Advaitacharya, may have been the dancer, like that. It's basically for the pleasure of the deity, then you have an ecstatic dancer, not to impress the crowd, but in Krishna consciousness for the specific pleasure of the deity.
Prabhupada was showing the devotees that he liked to dance. Not just the Swami step, but jumping up and down. That was a new revelation. He introduced that at Lasiyanaga Boulevard Temple, at the temple. He had introduced the jumping. Before, the Swami step was the conservative dance step that was used by everybody. But when Prabhupada started to jump at the Lasiyanaga Boulevard Temple in Los Angeles, that's when jumping became part of the choreography of the temple.
At the start of the procession, we had speakers on Subhadra's car, and Jivananda and I and a couple other devotees were sitting in the back with microphones to have kirtan over the microphone. Then Prabhupada sent word back that he didn't want the speakers anymore, and he just wanted kirtan parties in the crowd, like in India. So Jivananda and I turned the speakers off, hopped out, and started doing kirtan.
We marched literally 7 miles to the sea. Nobody thought of complaining or why don't we have buses to take us or something. People marched 7 miles to the sea, and when they got there at the Family Dog Auditorium, which was run by Chet Helms, who did all the Janis Joplin and Grateful Dead concerts and Moby Grape and Quicksilver and all that, there are those horses again. He let us use that place, and there were 10,000 people waiting at the beach who hadn't wanted to go through the ordeal of marching.
I was helping to cook, and then I went down to the Family Dog Auditorium where Srila Prabhupada was going to come after. There were so many people that would participate, actually, that we filled the Family Dog Auditorium, and simultaneously the beach was also filled with people, and we were distributing prasadam in both places. Big kirtans were going on in both places. And I was in the Family Dog when Srila Prabhupada arrived. And it was just so wonderful. And Srila Prabhupada was such a swan amongst men. And he floated into the Family Dog Auditorium. There were literally thousands and thousands of hippies present. And they were all in their full regalia, because this was a big event for them. So just ordinarily in that day, people's dress was interesting enough. But for this Rath Yatra festival, they really decked themselves out. Many dressed as Radha and Krishna and similar costumes like that. And so Srila Prabhupada came amongst this. He walked onto the stage and he looked out amongst the throngs of hippies, and he smiled and he said, "I have come to make all the hippies into happies." And that evoked a tremendous tumult of transcendental roaring from all the devotees that were present. And everyone got swept away in this wave, this tidal wave of ecstasy that was coming from Srila Prabhupada's heart, and danced for hours and hours and hours. Vishnujan would just be chanting and swooning, and then he would just cry out, just chant and dance, and when you're tired, take prasadam, and then come and chant and dance more. And that's literally what went on for hours and hours and hours.
There were so many unusual people there, and Srila Prabhupada explaining that the people in general had become hippies because they were disillusioned with modern society. But if they didn't find any guidance, then they would end up in a more difficult situation than the one that they had actually left. And he urged all of these hippies, drug-taking hippies, to take up his message of Krishna consciousness and actually become first-class human beings. It was an amazing experience for me. I think it was what cemented my understanding that I should stay within the Krishna consciousness family.
They assigned duties to everyone, and I was to be in charge of making the feast, with the idea of feeding between 5,000 and 10,000 people, or maybe more. So, undaunted, I had never really cooked for large amounts of people, but in those days, we could climb Mount Everest and not be tired. Prabhupada's energy was just driving the movement so powerfully that if we were given a duty to do, it was nothing. It was a feast actually that Prabhupada requested. There was so much prasadam there. We had gotten truckloads of watermelons donated, so at the end we just stopped slicing the watermelons and just started giving whole watermelons to take home with them or to serve out.
And it was the Family Dog Auditorium. It used to be the Shrine Auditorium. It was the Family Dog Auditorium. And Bhavananda had gotten a bunch of barbecue grills and filled them with briquettes and just bags and bags of frankincense incense. So the whole place was just billowing with frankincense incense. But I remember that a bunch of the Hells Angels followed us. They sort of got their fighting spirit out of them, and they followed the carts. So when we got to the Family Dog Auditorium, Prabhupada came on the stage a little bit later. We were all inside the auditorium. And when Prabhupada came in, all the devotees bowed down. And there was something so magnanimous and also heavy about Prabhupada's presence that so many other people bowed down. It's not an unusual occurrence that people would just instinctively bow down that here's a saintly person. And I remember that it was a wood floor, and when they bowed down, there was a couple of Hell's Angels next to me, and their chains and billy clubs and everything fell out and hit the floor. And I was thinking how when all the Lord Brahmas, all bowed before before Krishna and all their helmets. So I was thinking that Prabhupada in Kali Yuga, even the Hell's Angels with all their billy clubs and helmets and everything. And Prabhupada started the lecture. It was the most amazing thing because they were hippies and college students and from UC Berkeley and San Jose State, and then there were these Hell's Angels and there were Black Panthers. Just such a montage. And Prabhupada started off his lecture by saying, "My dear frustrated youth of America."
When Prabhupada danced, when we had kirtan inside the family dog and Srila Prabhupada danced, it was like, it was very hard to even express what it was like. Everybody, the crowd went ecstatic. I mean, not just devotees, all the people there were